It's up! Turks, Cenk, Uygur, Adrienne, Lawrence with you guys. We got an exciting show for you all. Donald Trump versus Ron DeSantis. It's happening. It's fun for everybody. And later in the program, not fun. Kanye West apparently spoke admiringly of Adolf Hitler. So we will talk a little bit about that later in the program too. Adrienne, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Best I can be doing, that's for sure.
You know, I'm surprised I don't say, yo, Adrienne, more to you. Given.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah. You're like, yeah, I am too, that you don't do that cheesy thing. I think you're right. All right, let's get to it. What do you got for us?
All right, so we're heading down to Florida, and I'm wondering, where will Ron DeSantis be 2 nights before the midterm elections? Well, he's not going to be at former President Donald Trump's rally. The Florida governor did not receive an invitation to Trump's Get Out the Vote event featuring Senator Marco Rubio in Miami. And the snub speaks to this growing tension between the two GOP leaders leading up to the 2024 presidential election. So let's check out Trump's statement announcing the rally in support of Rubio, someone he has publicly dissed and disrespected numerous times in the past. President Donald J. Trump, 45th president of the United States, hosts a Get Out the Vote rally in support of endorsed candidate and special guest, Senator Marco Rubio in Florida, where his 2022 endorsement record is currently undefeated, 19-0. Notably, a Trump advisor told Politico that DeSantis, who is also running for re-election in the November midterm, is not attending the rally. Oh yeah, so it's very interesting how we never really kind of evolved past high school and whether we get invites, but I think this might signal a little something more. Cenk, what is it saying to you?
Yeah, it says a lot to me, but first, as you paused on Get Out in the rally, first of all, I thought Get Out. Then I thought that they were gonna have a Get Out of Jail Free card rally, which I think could actually kind of also be fitting. And I was like, oh, get out the vote, right, got it. So now, guys, this is a super interesting story because for some reason, there's a lot of people convinced that Donald Trump's definitely not going to run. I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't see a hint of that. I see him coming like a freight train towards the Republican primaries. And if he goes in there, do you think he's going to tolerate any dissent, anyone running against him? No, he's going to be vicious to them. And we've talked on this show about whether Ron DeSantis can stand up to that. And so far, our conclusion is a resounding no. And so this is Donald Trump basically marking his territory, if you will. Saying, here, 2 days before the election, DeSantis, you got an election coming up? No, I'm urinating in this corner here. It's mine, okay? And I'm taking all the attention and I'm not inviting you, okay? And this is not remotely subtle. I love how sometimes, I don't know what's wrong with mainstream media. I don't know what's wrong with their heads, but they're like, oh, this is, how do you read the tea leaves? There's no tea leaves. He didn't invite him. And Ron DeSantis is like literally crying about it. He's super hurt. We got more details on that for you guys.
Yeah, and I agree with you about marking territory because I think Donald Trump kind of has a leg up when it comes to Florida. No pun intended with the whole peeing on things, but it's kind of like, yeah, I guess. But Really? Can Ron DeSantis flex like Trump can? Trump has had a search warrant served on him in Florida. What's Ron DeSantis got? Like, come on. Like, this is what Donald Trump feels like is his home territory. And so I could definitely see him boxing out. But when it comes to whether he or Ron are willing to admit that they're butt hurt by each other, I don't know if that's the case, because DeSantis's camp, it definitely is none too pleased with Trump's seemingly impromptu party. And they're letting people know about it. We know this for Politico. The apparent snub angered some people within DeSantis's orbit who complained that the Florida governor's team was not informed of the rally prior to Trump's announcing it. The timing of the Trump and Rubio event means any campaign event DeSantis holds that day won't get as much attention during the all-important final stretch of the 2022 midterms. And some of the governor's team members, they expressed their fury using all sorts of little adjectives. Well, we know this. You've got the Sunday before Election Day totally hijacked by Trump parachuting in on Trump Force One, taking up the whole day, said a longtime Republican consultant who was close to the governor. No Republican could go to a DeSantis event that day, none. And DeSantis won't be here. This is big. Another person who is influential in DeSantis's world said it was an elbow to Ron's throat and blamed Trump advisors. Oh my goodness, I swear, these people do not have enough oppression. The thought that they are now making this into some kind of little violence metaphor. It's like, give me a break. The privilege here is just so utterly high. But it is kind of fun watching these privileged men get all, butt hurt and in these positions where they're engaging in these antics. Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Donald Trump had one more super direct thing about this that we're gonna get to involving Megyn Kelly. But on this front, don't ask DeSantis if he's hurt, dog. He's hurt because his advisors are talking about elbow to the throat. And if you were wondering who's more powerful, well, DeSantis's people just told you if Trump is having an event in his state, nobody will come to a DeSantis event. So there's no point in him having one. And he feels like they hijacked the day 2 days before the election. Well, you just told us you're his beta. Because if you were the alpha, you would have an event and you wouldn't invite Trump and nobody would go to Trump's event. But now that's clearly not the case. So I'm afraid Trump's gonna take this clip and put it on his platform. But I'm just doing political analysis for you guys. Obviously, I despise Donald Trump. But right now, I don't really think there's a question anymore as to who's the top dog. And Trump is gonna make sure that DeSantis knows it. And this is the moment where DeSantis could fight back, but he ain't going to because he's scared of him.
Yeah, exactly. He's just having his minions get out there, not release their names, but complain. And instead, of course, Donald Trump is not trying to play it cool. He's not playing politics. He's putting it all there out on the streets. One Trump advisor said that there's no bad blood between the two, both leading potential 2024 presidential between the leading potential 2024 presidential candidates. Sources told CNN, however, that Trump has complained about DeSantis and indicated he was ungrateful to Trump, who believes he is responsible for DeSantis' success in 2018. And Trump is not hiding his true feelings or trying to play politics again. Late Wednesday, the 76-year-old future felon, I would say, he took to social media to throw fuel on the fire. The former president shared a video from Dave Rubin's recent podcast dismissing DeSantis' chances against Trump in a potential presidential face-off. Is that right?
I just don't think anybody else could win if Trump runs. So, and
Really?
I don't
know. You think if they got on a stage, you don't think that DeSantis is crafty enough or stands enough? Really? Interesting.
No, I don't even think that a little. I think Trump sucks up all the energy in every room, no matter what. And even someone as skilled as a politician and smart policy-wise as DeSantis can't overcome that. He can't. You really think the hardcore MAGA is gonna abandon Trump for DeSantis? They're not. They like DeSantis, but they don't think it's his turn. They think Trump was screwed out of his last election, that he was screwed out of his first term by all the craziness, the Russiagate and so on. And they think he is entitled. He deserves another shot at it. Like the hardcore Trump faithful, he's unshakable. They like DeSantis, but they would never cross Trump for him. And they think that DeSantis owes his political career to Trump.
Yep, that's right. And Trump went ahead and pushed that out on his Truth Social account with the quote saying, "I agree." Yeah, that seems like it's totally right up Trump's alley to make sure that people know where he stands as it concerns DeSantis. Cenk.
So look, where's the confusion? I don't know why people are still having a debate about this. No, Trump is saying you better not run, DeSantis, and if you do, I'll destroy you. He's saying, yeah, if we run, I'm gonna kick his ass. I agree. Where's the vague part? There's nothing vague about that at all, right? So that is super clear. Now, as to whether Megyn Kelly's right, yeah. So look, I'm no fan of Megyn Kelly. I loathe Donald Trump. She's no fan of Donald Trump. Nonetheless, her political analysis in this rare case is 100% correct. And so everybody who's living in La La Land, in an alternate reality where everything's just gonna be fine and the Republicans are gonna go back to being normal, wakey, okay? So Donald Trump is very likely to come back, and he is very, very, very likely to win the primary. And then, God help us, I hope the Democrats know what they're doing. And as I say that sentence, I worry for the entire country.
Yeah, definitely a lot of worrying going on, including a part of the country that is in the South. Senator Lindsey Graham, well, he's been hitting the campaign trail with Georgia Senate hopeful Herschel Walker. And on Wednesday, the two gentlemen, they did a joint appearance on Sean Hannity's show. And while trying to prove that the GOP isn't racist, well, Graham managed to employ a racist trope, commonly known as tokenism.
What is it about this guy? He changes the entire narrative of the left. We're a party of racists, Sean. Me and you're a racist. The Republican Party's racist. Well, what happens when the Republican Party elects and nominates Herschel Walker, an African-American black Heisman Trophy winner, right? Olympian? It destroys the whole narrative. John James, Tim Scott, Herschel Walker. Everybody in San Francisco is going to jump off a bridge if we elect this man. A black conservative beats a black liberal in Georgia. They're scared to death of Herschel Walker because if Herschel Walker becomes a Republican, maybe every other young child in America of color might want to be a Republican.
Yeah, so after that embarrassing stunt, Graham seemed to think he had hit it out of the ballpark, and he thought it was a good idea to go ahead and echo the same argument again to a crowd earlier today.
So focused on Herschel. They're afraid of Herschel Walker. Because if Herschel Walker wins, that means we're not racist. And if you're a Republican, aren't you being tired of being called a racist all the time by everybody? Here's what liberals fear the most: a strong, confident black man being a Republican in Washington.
Utter joke. No one's afraid of Herschel Walker other than a fetus. But we need to talk about this larger framework. The fact is that this is a politician's version of I have a black friend. And this whole uplifting black faces to really further the GOP's agenda, well, it doesn't make the party's policies and practices any less racist. And it's kind of a friendly reminder that a lot of people forget is that racism doesn't have to be intentional, and it often is not, because the intent does not matter when the impact is burdening marginalized groups. Like for example, there in South Carolina where Graham reigns, well, the state has this new congressional map that's unconstitutional as far as I'm concerned in terms of diluting the power of the black vote, giving the GOP a 6-to-1 advantage. So Graham can't really go around here flaunting Walker as this example of a post-racial political GOP when really the impact of what's going on and the GOP's actions tells us that the GOP does not want equality. Cenk?
Yeah, so I mean, that first clip was unbelievable. It's so on the nose. He's like pointing at him. This is our token. We are going to pretend that we're not racist because we have put up this guy right next to me. Look, he's black and he's willing to say whatever we tell him to say, as long as we work it out for him and he's taken care of. Okay, so you see that? Go ahead. Hey, go ahead, puppet. Say what we told you to say. And by the way, what does Herschel Walker say? He says the same thing white racists say. Oh, the problem is black culture and the black dads are not around. And then, oops, we found out that it's not black culture at all. It's him. He was projecting all of his vices and all of his problems onto other black people. And why do you think the Republicans picked him? That's exactly why they picked him. They're like, oh, you're gonna blame all black people for a thing they didn't do, but you did. Oh, we love that. What is that? That's literally racism. And so I know it hurts their feelings. I know it does. And so they're like, why don't you just let us say terrible things about black people? We just want to think it. Come on, you know how they are and their culture is, and you know that they're not around, and you know how they are. You're not getting it. That's the definition of racism. You're just not getting it. And you think, hey, listen, I can say all these terrible things, and I could hire Herschel Walker to say them for me. So I mean, it's kind of a political blackface, right? Here, like Lindsey Graham's putting Herschel Walker in front of him and saying, okay, now look at what the black guy is saying, okay? And guys, that doesn't absolve you, it only makes it worse. And they say all of these awful things about black folks, and then when you say, hey, that's racist, they go, whoa, 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 you're hurting my feelings. What about the feelings of the other people that you label and stereotype and say all these horrible things about? No, your feelings don't count. Only right-wing white feelings in the South count. It's absurd. And then one more thing about this. So they do voter purges in Georgia. Brian Kemp's famous for that. He did it before the first Stacey Abrams race. They're still doing it, and it mainly targets minorities and especially African Americans. And they go, yeah, I know we're taking your voting rights away, but we got a black guy to do it for us. That doesn't make it better, man. It just doesn't. I know you want to feel better about it, but no, sorry, no deal. And Herschel Walker just sitting there, taking it and saying, oh yeah. It's just, I don't want to say anymore. It's just disgusting.
Absolutely. And the thing is, he's not very far off from Kanye. He's just a puppet of the system. And the thing is it's not just Graham out there of the GOP. Republicans are often out here trying to use black conservatives as props really to advance their agenda. And one of the obvious examples that we have is from 2016 when Donald Trump literally referred to a supporter as my African American.
We had a case where we had an African American guy who was a fan of mine. Great fan, great guy. In fact, I want to find out what's going on with him. You know what I'm, look at my African American over here. Look at him.
Utterly disgusting. Well, that black man that was being referred to there, his name is Gregory Cheadle. He's since left the Republican Party. Here he is in 2020 explaining his reasoning.
What have you seen since Trump's become president? What has changed your mind about him and about the party?
Well, I mean, he and the party have just shown that they have no interest in any other group but whites. You know, whites are the primary group. Everyone else may get crumbs, but his whole agenda is targeted toward benefiting whites, and that for the GOP as well.
Yeah, I don't know how this came to this sudden epiphany as opposed to just decades on decades of the legacy of the GOP, but hey, to each his own. I do find it very ironic how the GOP often will denounce any kind of use or reference of race, but then all the while you have Republicans like Trump and Graham and others out there who clearly are using race for their political gain. It just, we get to clearly see who these people are and it's disgusting. Cenk.
Yeah, look, it wasn't a gaffe. He said, that's my African American. And he didn't say, oh I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. He never apologized for it. He never explained it. He just figured, hey, you're mine, okay? And I've got one. There he is, my African American, right? It turns out he wasn't his African American, as you just saw. And I think there used to be like black businessmen, et cetera, that were Republicans. And when I was growing up, and that, look, you could argue that they were wrong back then, right? You could argue I was wrong back then. But now, as this gentleman is saying, there's no subtlety left. You know, there's no, hey, I'm economically conservative. Hey, I'm this or I'm that. No, they're just flat out came out of the racist closet and they're over the top with it. So if you're still in that group, all right. I mean, hey, everybody makes their choices. I hope you can live with yourself. But for the rest of us, the people that live in the real world, reality-based world, none of this works. it only makes it worse. And their policies are the same exact way and discriminatory against African Americans. And it doesn't matter if they got a guy who's black to say it for them. And I'll end on this, Adrienne. Look, you guys have seen them do this on Fox News. You've seen the Republican Party do this for decades. They will pick one guy from each race, then they'll pick a woman, and they will have that person speak out against their own group. It's almost like hostage videos, except to be fair, they pay well, right? So it's the oldest trick in the book. If any, pro right-wing Israeli advocates will always bring on some Muslim guy to go, Israel is right, Palestinians and Muslims are overly violent, it's their fault, it's their religion's fault, they deserve it, right? And then they go, what, a Muslim said it. I mean, it's just the oldest trick in the book. And so if you're still falling for that trick, you kind of want to fall for it.
Yep, that is absolutely correct. Oldest trick in the book. And so it's sad if anybody is listening to Lindsey Graham as opposed to maybe listening to common sense. But, well, we will be back shortly after this.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Adrienne, and Lisa of Parvati Therapy are with you guys. Lisa, thanks for joining. We appreciate it. She did that by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. You can do it at tyt.com/join. All right, Adrienne, what's next?
All right, so now we are going to the academic world for some insight. There's a new study that just revealed that Americans living in conservative states, well, they die younger than those living in states governed by liberals. And this study was conducted by a group of academics from schools ranging from Harvard to Syracuse, University of Texas at Austin, and so on. And their findings, which were published in this inclusive journal called Plus One, well, they were quite sobering. But before we hit the findings, let's look at what this study's goals were. The study centers on two main questions. First, how were state policy context associated with working age mortality in recent decades? Second, how might hypothetical changes in state policy context affect working age mortality? For both questions, we focused on adults ages 25 to 64 and conduct the analysis separately by sex. The findings provide new insight into how state policy contexts are associated with working age mortality and how changing those contexts might save lives. So what were the research findings here? Well, simulations indicate that changing all policy domains in all states to a fully liberal orientation might have saved over 170,000 lives in 2019, while changing them to a fully conservative orientation might have cost 217,000 lives. Results show that the policy domains were associated with working age mortality, meaning people of working ages were more likely to die in conservative states or states run by conservative leaders than liberal. But there were some interesting findings when it came to specific policies as far as it goes conservative and liberal. As noted in The Guardian, bucking the trend, the study found that more conservative marijuana policies were associated with lower mortality rates. But it also found that more liberal policies on the environment, gun safety, labor, economic taxes, and tobacco taxes in a state were associated with lower mortality in that state. Especially strong associations were observed between certain domains and specific causes of death between the gun safety domain and suicide mortality among men, between the labor domain and alcohol-induced mortality, and between both the economic tax and tobacco tax domains and cardiovascular mortality. So, what is the spread here in terms of the left versus the right when it comes to leadership in the United States? Well, according to the National Council of State Legislatures, as of June, Republicans controlled 61% of state legislatures and Democrats at 35%. And in terms of whole state governments, Republicans controlled 46% and Democrats 12%, with 12 states divided. Basically, the read is that these conservative policies that are extremely limiting in terms of things that impact our life and our health and our existence and interaction with each other, it's more likely to lead to death than if we have more liberal-oriented policies that really seem to focus largely on protecting we the people. Is that your read too, Cenk?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple important things here. So number one, it's pre-COVID. So this doesn't even include the COVID numbers, which would skew this way more and make it far worse for the red states. And so there's a couple of different conclusions that you can reach from this. One is that the Republican-led states just simply care less about the lives of their citizens. They care more about their donations. So I'm going to get to that in a second because I think that that's the real big issue here, the underlying issue, right? And you're going to see it's not just the red states. America as a whole suffers from this when compared to other countries because we live under corporate rule. And this is what corporate rule does to you. But I want you to understand that the study is unbiased. Now look, for rational people, you know all these folks that are working on this aren't making it up, et cetera, right? But I know that these days you have to also talk to the folks who are very skeptical about everything. Oh yeah, Harvard and all these different colleges, I bet they all got together in a room and just made up numbers, right? People actually believe that. But in this case, if that was true, why would they make up that more marijuana usage and making it legal leads to a worse result? If they were making it up for the liberals or the left or whatever your fantasies are, right? So when I read that, I was like, oh, that sucks. I wish that weren't the case, right? But it is, and unlike the right wing, you guys, you cannot be like the right wing. Do not be like, nope, my team, only my team, facts be damned, right? So that's a fact, and that's a concerning fact, but it is what it is. So, okay, that doesn't mean, by the way, you change the policy instantly, no, but you factor that in. That's a data point that's really important, okay? So why am I relating it to corporatism? Because why do they pass those laws? Why do the blue states pass laws that are more effective in serving the voters and literally keeping you alive, and the red states don't? Because the Republicans take more donor money. And what do the donors want? They don't want you protected from environmental pollution because they're the ones doing environmental pollution. They don't want you protected from tobacco because they're the ones selling tobacco. And every one of these is so that corporations can maximize profits. And they paid the Republicans, and the Republicans said, absolutely, we'll have no limits at all. Now, unfortunately, they also paid Democrats. Hey, look, and I often criticize Democrats, but here they are. You can see in the states that picking a Democrat actually makes a difference. You might literally live a couple more years if you do on the state level, right? So that's amazing. So credit to the Democrats for clearly being better in this regard, not necessarily on all issues or at the national level, but very specifically at the state level here. But good, great, right? But still, as a country, we're way worse off than other countries because both the blue state governors and the red state governors take money from corporations. It's just the Republicans are more vicious about it.
Absolutely. And as Cenk had also mentioned, we're not doing that great on the American front in terms of life expectancy anyway. So keep this. Americans die younger than people in most other high income countries with a life expectancy of 78.8 years in 2019. Americans died 5.7 years earlier than people in Japan, the global leader, 3.3 years earlier than their northern neighbors in Canada, and 2.5 years before their closest geopolitical allies in the UK. Shockingly, US life expectancy falls between two middle income countries, Cuba and Albania. Within the United States, life expectancy differs markedly across geographic areas such as states and counties. In 2019, it ranged from 74.4 years in Mississippi and 80.9 in Hawaii. The rise in working age mortality rates in the US in recent decades largely reflects stalled declines in cardiovascular disease mortality alongside rising mortality from alcohol-induced causes, suicide and drug poisoning. And it has been especially severe in some US states. Building on recent work, this study examined whether US state policy context may be a central explanation. So basically, also as noted by the study's authors, one study found that US life expectancy could increase by nearly 4 years if The country matched the average level of social policy generosity offered in 17 other high-income countries. As in, there are so many other countries out there that we could model our policies after and increase our life expectancy. But unfortunately, we want to increase our coffers. So we focus on that. And it seems to be that there's no one single factor out there that's really been identified to explain the increase in US mortality or the US's disadvantage compared to its peer countries. The root causes are really multifaceted, very complex, whether it's social, political, cultural, socioeconomic. It's just that all layers, basically meaning that we are a hot mess and it's killing us. Cenk?
Yeah, so I want to emphasize three things that Adrienne just said because they're amazing. You see that gigantic difference in life expectancy between Hawaii and Mississippi? Now, that's not all policy. There's obviously other factors like weather and other conditions, lifestyles, etc., right? But they factored that out and still got a giant discrepancy. So, guys, just be careful living in the red state. I mean, in so many different ways. And then you got the right wingers going, America's number one. Are we? Our life expectancies between Cuba and Albania. Sweet home Albania is doing better than us and doing way better than sweet home Alabama. So what are we doing here? Oh, goddamn communists in Cuba, they don't know what they're doing. Oh, they live longer than us? Oh, that's weird and unfortunate, right? So I'm not saying we should be like Cuba, I'm not saying we should be communist, but we're in the other extreme where we live under complete and utter corporate rule. And what that leads to, guys, is, did you hear what Adrienne said? We live on average 4 years less than other developed nations. Why? Because they protect their citizens. It doesn't mean they're communists. It doesn't mean that they don't have any private industry. No, they have plenty of private industry. Mercedes and BMW come from Germany. IKEA and Volvo come from Sweden. They're generally socialist countries. They live longer, they're happier. They do better under every index, not because they took away private industry, but because they regulated it to protect their citizens. That's what we need to do here. It's literally costing us years of our lives.
Absolutely, and how do we spend those years? Working. New troubling study that's illustrating just how much Americans are struggling to pay bills amid inflation and also rising costs of living. More than half of Americans are reportedly considering taking an extra job to meet ends. Employees in the US are combating the soaring prices of essentials like groceries, housing, and gas by looking for ways to increase their incomes and cut down on expenses, according to a new study by Qualtrics, a software technology company. The survey of more than 1,000 full-time employees found that 38% of workers have looked for a second job, while another 14% are planning to do so. Now, working parents are especially pinched, as nearly 70% said that their pay isn't keeping up with costs, the poll states. About 47% of employees with children have looked for a second job, higher than the rate of workers overall. The cost of raising a child through high school has surged to more than 300 grand, up roughly 26,000 from 2 years ago, according to a recent Brookings Institute estimate. And the thing is it's not unusual, as I'm sure many of you know, for American workers to work multiple jobs and also have side hustles, because who doesn't have one? But people are finding that it's even more impossible just to live on just one source of income and maybe a side hustle. As of September, 7.8 million Americans are working more than one job, making up 4.9% of the total workforce, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. A record 440,000 Americans were working two full-time positions in August compared to 308,000. Wow, in February of 2020. Bear in mind that statistics, that is people working two full-time jobs. Two full-time jobs. Wow, not just some side hustle occasionally. And in addition to working multiple jobs, to cope with higher costs, some workers are seeking more shifts or hours from their employers, while others say they're looking for a higher paying job. Almost 6 in 10 want the chance to work overtime or extra shifts, while about 4 in 10 have searched for a new job with higher pay. It's incredible how much people are slaving away and spending their time to try to just simply afford the basics. It really tells you that our leadership is not taking care of we the people, but using us as slaves to continue to produce its capitalistic system. Cenk.
Yeah, so in the old days, we used to have one person working in the family. Okay, now was that ideal? No, because women generally didn't have the freedom to work at way back in the day, right? It's actually not way back in the day, it's just a little back in the day, right? So then we allowed that freedom, that's great, that's wonderful. The problem is that corporatism started to take over and then you couldn't keep up with any of the costs, right? And the companies figured out ways to squeeze not just their customers, but their employees. And they created this vice grip. And then they took over the government and the government let them do whatever they wanted. So then all of a sudden, it wasn't optional anymore. You had to have both people in the marriage or relationship working. Now, both people are starting to get to a point where they need 2 jobs. So you need 3 to 4 jobs per family to keep up. I mean, so, Adrienne used a harsh word there, but I mean, whatever you want to call it, indentured servitude, oppression of any sort, it still is the same idea. Back to the mines, back to the lines, okay? The assembly lines. And there's no government to protect us, there's no one to help us. So they're extracting all of the wealth. By the way, they're also killing our competition, which is against capitalism, because this is corporatism, where corporations try to establish monopolies and the government helps them to do that. And they also have leverage over their own employees. For example, once your health insurance is tied to your your employer, it's harder for you to leave because your life might literally depend on you staying with your employer. Well, now they got you. You want to say that's a shackle, a chain? Well, in a sense it is, isn't it? Right? If you lose one job, you're screwed. A lot of people can't afford $400 hit to their pocketbook. That it will send them into bankruptcy, into being broke, having no money in their bank account. It's like 40% of the country. So this is the giant disconnect between Washington and the rest of the country. Look at that first number Adrienne read to you. 38% are doing it now, and 14% are thinking about doing it. That's 52%. That's more than half the country saying, I need a second job. And a lot of them have partners who also need a second job. And meanwhile in Washington, they don't understand that at all. They're like, okay, well, who should we blame on for inflation? Should we blame the Federal Reserve for printing trillions of dollars and handing it to the banks? No way, no. Should we blame the oil companies, which we're gonna get to in a second, that are having record profits? No way, no. Whose fault is it? The workers, their wages are too high. So the Republicans say insane things like that, and the Democrats don't push back. And so here we are. I mean, I remember when inflation broke out, we showed it to you here on the Young Turks. It wasn't just Fox News, it was Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. All of their pundits, all of their anchors say, the wages are too high, that's what's causing inflation, wages are too high. Does it look like wages are too high? That's an insane point to make.
Absolutely, and the thing is that study does not necessarily indicate in terms of the race and gender divide, because the reality is we know that women and also individuals from marginalized racial groups make less money. So you might be working just as much, but you're making maybe a dime on the dollar, so to speak. And thus you have to get another job and work more. And if research from my book serves me correctly, it's also a reality that Black and Hispanic women are more likely to have multiple jobs than anyone else. And it just tells you that there is a segment of our society that is grinding and has been grinding for a very, very long time, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. And yet no one has really responded. But now that we are just about all in that same boat, now it's getting more attention. And something that's also getting attention is oil companies and the fact that they are making so much money hand over fist while people are struggling to be able to afford gas to put into their cars. We just found out that Shell, one of the oil and gas super majors, they call them, well, the numbers came out today, and Shell will buy back $4 billion worth of shares and increase its dividends by 15%. After posting another gigantic quarterly profit thanks to strong oil and gas prices. The additional buybacks will increase total share purchases for the year to $18.5 billion, some 10% of the company's share capital. And entities like Shell, they're able to do these stock buybacks because of their sky high profits. CNN also said this: The UK company posted net income of 9.45 billion in the third quarter, more than double the 4.1 billion it recorded a year ago. The result was driven by a strong performance in its oil, exploration, and production business, Shell said. The third quarter performance means that Shell has reported profit of more than $30 billion for the first 9 months of the year, 58% more than it recorded for the whole of 2021. It posted a record 11.5 billion profit in the second quarter when oil prices were above $100 a barrel. Basically, oil companies are advancing their executives and investors using inflation and global instability as a cover, while American consumers are struggling getting multiple jobs because of the exorbitant prices are out there. This is an absolute joke, and our leadership is not protecting us. Cenk.
Yeah, so a couple things to emphasize here. So why are the oil companies making money hand over fist or over barreled? Because of supply and demand. So it has to do with a little bit about the Ukraine war. It has to do with OPEC restricting the supply, et cetera, right? So that's simple economics. Now, that's not the controversial part. So but remember, those market forces allow them to set a higher price, but they still choose to set that higher price. And if you say, well, of course they're gonna choose to set the higher price, for the same cost, they're gonna have a much larger profit. Well, of course you're right. That is how corporations work. I understand that phenomenon, and whether you can live with that phenomenon is a different thing, because some people say, hey, we should do a windfall tax, et cetera. So that's an interesting conversation. But the main point I wanna make is, when I see people on TV and people in the New York Times and all the mainstream media saying, no, we can't do $15 minimum wage, we can't do paid family leave, we can't do child tax credit because it would drive up inflation. And that's what's causing this. Anything that helps the American worker is what's causing inflation. Oh, the oil companies, of course not, don't be ridiculous. They just had record profits. If they were hurt by inflation, they say, well, okay, this is where supply and demand is, but I'll tell you what, man, people are not, they just can't pay it. And so we're also gonna take a hit. The customers are gonna take a hit and we're gonna take a hit. No, they're not taking any hit at all. They're making record profit. They're making more money than they did before. But yet, all of the liars in power, whether they're on TV and in media or they're in Washington as politicians, will tell you, no, it's not the beloved corporations. It is not. It is not the beloved oil companies. No way. Those poor guys, they're also suffering so much under inflation. Total, utter lie. 100% provable lie. We just showed it to you, right? No, it's really the workers' fault. No, Manchin and Sinema say, and Biden bows his head. Of course not. No child tax credit, no paid family leave, no higher wages. No wages for you. The oil companies get everything. Look at what they just did. That's a buyback. They're having the time of their lives. If they were under duress, they wouldn't be doing buybacks. They'd be investing into their product. They'd be maintaining cash. No, they're like, they're literally swimming in money. So they extracted $4 billion worth of wealth. They're allowed to do that, but it tells you that inflation, of course, is not your fault. You'd have to be the marketing arm of corporate rule to say something so absurd. Oh, that's right. That's exactly what mainstream media is. Don't believe them that they're doing news. They're just trying to get you to bow your head to the status quo and to this absurd state of affairs where you all have to suffer and get a second job while they extract billions in wealth on a daily basis.
Yep, as we suffer. And we are going to take a break and we'll be back with more investment advice that maybe didn't go very well. See you in a sec.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Adrienne with you guys. Check out Adrienne on Rebel Headquarters. She does amazing videos there, great job there. And joining us today also, Daytime Dragon. They just became a member by hitting the join button below on YouTube, so great to have you with us, Daytime. And everybody else, you can do it at tyt.com/join. Perfect time to do it because we're doing food for thought trivia this week, where 100 of our members will get $100, free $100 from Blue Apron and a gift card, true gift card. You don't have to put your credit card information in. You're actually gonna get $100 worth of food. A lot of you will. All right, Adrienne, what's next?
All right, let's watch it.
History is filled with almosts, with those who almost adventured, who almost achieved, but ultimately, for them it proved to be too much. Then there are others, the ones who embrace the moment and commit.
Yeah, that was Jason Bourne running the hustle of his life. Yeah, that's how the now infamous Matt Damon Crypto.com ad, well, that's how it started. And we know now how it ended. It did not end well for anybody who actually invested and took that actor's advice. Oh, it aged incredibly poorly. And that ad had aired just about a year ago to the day. And so before we give you the update about how people, how things turned out for the investors, let's finish watching the rest of the ad.
And in these moments of truth, these men and women, these mere mortals, just like you and me, as they peer over the edge, they calm their minds and steel their nerves with 4 simple words that have been whispered by the intrepid since the time of the Romans. Fortune favors the brave.
Yeah, so if I tell you, fortune did not favor the brave, they went broke. Per The Intercept, on the day that the ad was released, which was October 28, 2021, Bitcoin, the most famous cryptocurrency, was trading at $60,000 a piece. As of the moment this was published, 1 Bitcoin cost $20,000. That means that if you were encouraged by Matt Damon to buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin last October 28th, it would now be worth about $342. Yeah. So you're probably wondering whether Matt Damon at least made some money from this stunt. And this is what we know. It's unclear how Damon was compensated for the ad. A Bloomberg article from last October 28th says that Damon is an investor in Crypto.com, but not whether he received shares from his work. It also says that Crypto.com made a $1 million donation to Damon's charity, water.org, although it does not state that this was in return for the ad. I've never done an endorsement like this, Damon is quoted as saying, "We're hoping this is the beginning of a great long-term collaboration." Yeah, no, not at all. Well, Damon, he's really far from the only celeb out there looking for a quick buck off of crypto. This per the New York Times. Last June, Kim K promoted the little-known token Ethereum Max on Instagram after her post went up. The value of Ethereum Max cratered, dropping by 98%. A resulting class action lawsuit accuses Kardashian and other Ethereum Max promoters of aiding and abetting a pump and dump scam. Her attorney describes the allegation as without merit and says they will defend the action vigorously. Because attorneys always say they're gonna defend an action vigorously, it don't mean nothing. But I can tell you that there have been plenty of celebs out here pushing out these cryptos, from Reese Witherspoon to LeBron James to Larry David. And the thing is I don't really think it's gone very well. And this is kind of just evidence of that fact, as we're seeing with Matt Damon's push for Crypto.com. Cenk.
Yeah, so there's a part of the story that's super random, but that I love. But first, come on guys, buyer beware. You really don't know that this thing's gonna be super volatile. Do you think that you, as the last guy in, has it all figured out? Or do you think maybe the guys who are playing this at a higher level might be manipulating you and that you're the sucker at the table? Did that not occur to you? So you're gonna, and why do you believe celebrities? Like seriously, like if they're subject matter experts and you say, you know what, Neil deGrasse Tyson is a bit of a celebrity, right? But he's a celebrity because he's a scientist, and so I trust him on science. Okay, fair, right? Matt Damon is a relatively smart guy actually, and I'm really surprised that he did this ad. But you're like, oh, I really liked him in Good Will Hunting, so I think he's got it right on crypto. Kim Kardashian, she's a very full-bodied person, so that's obviously she knows everything about Ethereum. Like what? How? Why do you make that assumption? It's amazing, but these ads do work. They totally work, and then they pump people up. They're like, oh yeah, I'll show you I'm brave. I'll put my money in. The guys at the top rarely lose it all, right? Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. And for the celebrities, they're just gonna get paid anyway, right? So they're good. They're already good, right? But the guy who goes in last, the guy who got like excited about the ad and went and put the money in, you're the first one to lose most of your money, if not all of your money. I'm just trying to help a brother out. Anyway, it doesn't mean that nobody can make money off of it, but you're kind of playing the lottery there because you got the crypto market figured out. Do you? Are you sure you do? And you got it figured out better than the guys at the top who already orchestrated the whole market in the first place? All right, well, look, anyways, it's a free country. You can do what you want. We're just trying to help you out. Buyer beware, be careful of these ads. They're just nonsense folks who don't know anything about this industry. Okay, but my favorite story. So they go, fortune favors the brave. And I love that quote too, to be fair, right? But I didn't know this, and John Schwartz did a great job of writing about this on The Intercept, and he educated me on this. It turns out that comes from Pliny the Elder. Okay, now that sounds pretty cool. It's an old Roman dude from AD 79, I believe. And so what was he famous for? Well, he was gonna go, and he's a good guy, he was gonna go help the people when Vesuvius exploded. That's the big volcano, and he was a good citizen, and he's gonna go over and he gets his ships and he's headed over. And then as they're getting there, it looks really bad, right? And a lot of people on the ship are like, Captain, I think we should really turn around. I think we might die too. And his helmsman says, no, fortune favors the brave. And they go forward and they all die. Awkward.
Yeah, what is the fortune to be gained there? Like a pat on the back, like get out of here. Why am I gonna risk my life and go into this clearly volcanic like chaos? What's the fortune there? I don't understand.
No, that's why it's hilarious that it's connected to that story where the fortune did not favor the brave at all. Okay, death favored the brave. That's what happened, okay? So in this case, I mean, it was kind of, it's just such on the nose analogy, right? No, a crypto volcano, let's head right in. I think we got this.
Yes, and they got this in terms of a crash. It hurt so many investors, and some frauds are still out there really trying to scam people. For example, here's Jim Messina, former Obama advisor turned crypto peddler, and pitching Bitcoin on Fox News.
Very much pursuing, the blockchain, the whole technology. We've got, crypto. Some people are loving it, some people are hating it. They say its time has passed and all. Where are you on this? Obviously, a big, proponent here. Right. Where do you see it going?
Look, I think blockchain and crypto is one of the most exciting developments in our lifetime. I think when this is all over, we're going to be known for this generation for COVID and for reimagining our financial system. I'm incredibly bullish on this. I think it's good to have a crypto winner, getting rid of some of the BS projects that are out there.
Bitcoin itself?
Look, I'm bullish. I'm buying Bitcoin right now. I think anything.
So in and around $20,000, can I ever get back to 60 some odd?
Oh, I'll bet you my Porsche gets back to 60.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Life truly is good if you have that to bet.
Yeah, I wonder how things are for him now. I'm sure he did have the best of intentions, I'm sure, going into this, but let's be real here. That stuff tanked. It was not a good look. Cenk, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, Jim Messina is a corporate goon. So, Neil Cavuto said he's a big proponent of it. He's not just the proponent of it, he's a very literal lobbyist for crypto. Isn't it amazing they never label people on cable news or mainstream media? Yeah, this guy's going to try to scam you on behalf of crypto because he literally gets paid to do that. Oh, Mr. Expert, what do you think? You're a big proponent, okay? And I told you guys about Jim Messina. We've been doing this show forever. So he's one of these corporate Democrats that worked for Obama. He was deputy chief of staff, and then he was his campaign manager in 2012. So in Washington, he's considered a demigod. They're like, oh, Jim Messina, and he worked for Obama. He's such a good guy. He's such a good, now he's going around working for right-wing, atrocious characters all across the world. He works for any corporation that'll buy his ass. And he's like, crypto, you're all gonna lose your money. Yeah, but do I get paid? I got paid a lot, didn't I? Yes, right? And he's a prototypical corporate Democrat. He makes Terry McAuliffe look like a progressive. So this is who they are. And by the way, the next time we'll get into a political debate with Jim Messina, and he will say, no, of course the Democrats should surrender to Republicans. Oh, there's nothing they could do. Did we get the tax cut? Yeah, we got the deregulation. Yeah. And we'll call it out, and people will be like, you can't say that about Jim Messina. He worked for Barack Obama. He's such a saint. No, he's a corporate goon. And he just showed you, I mean, are you kidding me? I'll bet you my Porsche. And he says it with a straight face. Because everybody in Washington is super rich. And they don't think that that's a big deal at all. We just did a story for you saying now 52% of Americans are thinking of getting a second job because they're dying out there, okay? We did another story that shows you life expectancy in America is 4 years less than other developed nations because we live under corporate rule and we don't get protected from anything, tobacco, environmental regulation, nothing. We get no protections from our so-called representatives because they're crooks like Jim Messina. And then they go around going, oh, well, I'll bet you a Porsche, I'll bet you a Bentley, oh, I'll meet you on the yacht. And they say it on goddamn TV, rubbing your faces in it, because they think, what? I don't understand why people are complaining the stock market's up today. We're sick of these guys.
It is incredibly disheartening, but I guess I don't have time to fix the world right now because I got to go to the dentist, so I got to pass the torch.
Okay, I thought for sure that we were going to end the first hour early today. Of course we didn't. Of course not. Ben Gleib's next. We've got amazing stories in the second hour for you guys, including some. There's a really bad development in Russia, and it connects to here in America. I'll explain all that. Everybody, check out Adrienne on Rebel Headquarters. You're the best, Adrienne. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
Matt Damon.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.